Lava for Good and Stand Together Music present the War on Drugs podcast, Season 2. This season, we're diving deeper into the real stories behind the war on drugs, its impact, its failures, and the people offering a better path forward. All right. Welcome to Season 2 of the War on Drugs.
Hey, man. Yeah, we back at it.
Yeah. Greg Lott and Clayton English.
Yes, man.
We've been traveling quite a bit.
Yeah, we've been going independently and together to do some of these interviews. So, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of what this season's going to be, last year we were much more in the studio kind of setting that basis for what the war on drugs was and what we think. And I think you summarized it so well when you said that term, just like it's not a war on drugs, it's a war on people.
Right. The first season we kind of focused on the war side of it and the drug side of it and the policy side of it. And of course we had, actual people who were affected by this, but I think we leaned a lot more into the people with this season.
Their trials, their tribulations, them going through their own war on drugs, either through the criminal justice system, the healthcare system, it's musicians, it's athletes, just a wide swath of people and really interesting folks that you're going to hear a side of them that you probably didn't know about before.
Yeah.
We kind of want to bring that after all the doom and fucking gloom we brought to season 1.
You got to fill us in, man. What's going on with the policy?
It's been a busy time, yeah. So I work in public policy and work in criminal justice reform policy specifically and drug policy, obviously. And so this election cycle, some of the things that we saw at the ballot box where we had a couple constitutional amendments and things that people were voting on to legalize or decriminalize certain substances, mainly cannabis. So you may have heard about the Florida one. That gained a lot of attention because, now President Trump had signaled support for the amendment because he's a voter in Florida. It was the first time we ever had both candidates actually, vocally say they supported legalization. So that was kind of a good step forward.
Right. And Florida was for recreational, right?
Yeah. And they actually voted it down. So in Florida, it got a large majority, but in Florida, you need 2/3 of the vote. So that failed. We saw Nebraska get medical for the first time. North Dakota shot it down. They've had it happen a couple times.
Really?
You just have these things, in different areas. South Dakota too. The Dakota's just not going on it. And it really, and I'm seeing that, in those two states. And then we worked a lot in South Carolina. The same arguments that were being in North and South Dakota are the same things that were going on in South Carolina where, it's the fear mongering again. So
it's still happening.
It's still happening. It's still that cannabis is a gateway drug. It's going to turn your brain to mush, all these things.
That's still what they're using.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
And it's still being very effective. South Carolina doesn't have it. It keeps getting shot down in these areas. And I think it's something that we just need to have honest conversations about. And I think that's just been, the nature of the drug war, right? And in some places, it's still very effective. Yeah. And, we're still seeing that argument alive and well. But yeah, obviously there's the negative aspects and you're seeing it in some of these areas, but a place like Nebraska, like we just talked about, they were able to pass this through. And the things that we're seeing working are the facts and people's experiences. Again, people have experiences with cannabis now and they're okay to talk about it. A lot of this is being pushed by, folks that are, veterans that are coming in and talking about it. Right. Former law enforcement, a lot of the people that were testifying in South Carolina, in Kentucky when they were trying to push for more, research into plant-based medicines to tackle the opioid epidemic. Dakota Myers is one of the only living Medal of Honor recipients ever. Right. It was the big, proponent of that. And so you're seeing these types of things come in because people have lived experience where they say, well, that's not true. And this is my experience. And so it starts digging in, but that's where the information, the education, the output, I think really is helpful. But we still have those hurdles, for cannabis, for medical cannabis. They're pointing at places like Oregon that decriminalize, all drugs.
In the smaller, personal use amount, right?
Personal use amounts.
Right.
Yeah.
So kind of like if anybody's seen The Wire when they did the Amsterdam and just kind of let people run wild with it. Yeah, and a lot of people are pointing to Oregon as a failure as far as, the drug policy goes, but I think it was a learning experience.
Yeah.
They had a lot of factors against them. The fentanyl crisis really ticked up. We had COVID.
Right.
We had the
overdoses
housing
were going
crisis.
up
Yeah, and the treatment that was supposed to be provided was a year behind the legislation. So that's a year of people not really having access to the treatment.
Right. Yeah. They were supposed to kind of have each county or service was supposed to, bid for money, and it's supposed to bid process. Like, it's government.
Right.
It's going to take a while. And so, I think it's, a little cart before the horse sometimes where, you have this decriminalization and then there's supposed to be the services aren't set up. And so it's that structure and things like that. And I guess the good news is, one, like you said, yeah, they're trying something, and it's like having just people go in and out of jail that are living on the street is obviously not going to be a very helpful thing, but being able to, bring order to a city is necessary too. And so I think some of the things you saw from local communities where people were essentially just being left in their squalor and there was kind of an inaction, and some of that was probably, it's a really hard process to get this. And so the legislature kind of rolled it back. They really didn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. People think they completely rolled it back, but it's like, it's just a misdemeanor now for possession only. Before it was like you got a ticket and a citation.
Right.
I think you could pay like $100. But that was
fine,
something like that. Yeah. So I think it is lessons learned. It's not, whoa, what a mistake this was. But I think it is the types of things that we need to talk about. You need to have that balance where you can't just say, hey, police, you tried, now get out.
Right.
And it can't just be like, okay, the cops are coming back in to bust heads, because we know what that looks like too. The places where we've seen some like good positive impact, on the drug war and fentanyl are places like, I'll give an example of Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas, actually, because it is in two different cities.
Yeah, and they
two
get
different
mad about
states.
it.
Who cares? They do not what are y'all doing? Yeah. It's almost like they're doing it. It's like when someone spells her name, like, it's like, it's Jessica with a D, and you're like, what? And you're like, why are you, I don't care. Like, it's Kansas City. All right, whatever it is. Yeah. Right. So they bring in people every time there's an overdose, like homicide detectives, they interview people, but if there's people there that are struggling, they divert them. So it's that, it's the safety for the community, it's reducing crime, but hey, if you need help, we're going to try to get you out. Their police chief was a beat cop during the crack cocaine epidemic. And he said, I'm not going back to this again. And so that's the type of stuff where you have leadership that's good. That's what's going to happen. You just didn't have that in Oregon. You had, it's a real small place in Portland and other places that were super excited about this, and everywhere else wanted to fail. And when that happens, it's really difficult to make progress. Yeah,
and you're going to highlight what you deem a failure when you're against the progress that's trying to be pushed.
Yeah, how many times have we seen the drug war, the rhetoric misused for, like, we talked about Len Bias last year. That crack became 100 to 1 more punitive than cocaine when he didn't even die of crack. It was cocaine. So it doesn't matter. The same thing would happen to weed. There was that kid that apparently went crazy and killed his family in Florida in the 30s, but he was like schizophrenic.
He was already crazy.
Yeah, he was already crazy. The weed was actually helping. So it's those types of things. It's the same mistruths. We're seeing that same cycle, but there's some light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, we're here. We're not getting arrested for talking about it.
I don't think so.
I don't think so. Not yet.
We might leave, and it might be a whole different story. No, but with the stuff we're talking about now, this is pretty much state to state. Like you said, some states have had to roll back what they've tried to do. Some states have had a little more success. And
it even goes local to local, where you have certain, Dallas, like, decrimmed cannabis, but you go outside of Dallas County, it's that sort of thing.
That's Atlanta too. In the city, you can get a ticket, but you in another county, you're going to jail.
Yeah, exactly.
And, nobody's really taking what they're learning from the state, each individual state, and applying it to the federal level. How do you think that would change?
Yeah, it's kind of this thing where they both work off each other, right? So for those who don't know, the federal government still classifies cannabis as a Schedule I drug, which means it's the highest level of scheduling. It is
it's
the
up
same
there with cocaine.
Coke is actually
lower.
Right, that's right. Which is amazing. So it's up there with, like,
it's laughable unless you do cocaine. Then maybe you think it's right where it needs to be.
That's fair. Yeah, that looks about right. Yeah. All right, fair enough. Good job. All right, Mr. Anslinger wasn't always there. But so cannabis is scheduled there with heroin. It says it has no medical value and it is a highly likely to, for abuse. And so that's what it says. And so there's been a big effort at the federal level to deschedule it completely, where the feds would just, almost like alcohol is, where they would regulate it, but on like the food side to make sure there's not poison, not like, on the other end of like criminalizing it, just regulation. But what they're going to do is what the government does all the time is like try to hit this middle road of rescheduling it, make it Schedule 3. Schedule 3 is a lot of like, it's if you get cough medicine with codeine, you need a prescription or some sort of verification. You can't just get it over the counter or have it recreational. Right. So, but it says, hey, there is some medical value here. There's some risk of abuse. So this is where it's at. And so the issues with all of that is, one, when it's completely Schedule 1, it's a criminal offense to do anything with
anything around it.
So all the business aspects to it. If you're a plumber that wants to work on the toilet in a cannabis shop, like you could potentially be like, it's all these things. Banks. You can't put your money in there. Like all these different things that impact it because the feds still say that.
Right.
So even if you're a voter and you're in a community where you say, this is how we want to live, and this is what we've looked at, we have medical prescribing, all that stuff, the feds can say this is all legal. Because it is. They're all living in crime right now. We talked to, Be Real from Cypress Hill, who's not only an amazing rap artist still, is an amazing entrepreneur in the cannabis industry, and has different places in different states. And we talked to him about the complications of not only just running in LA, but running in other, it's crazy.
Because there's no uniform way to do it. The packaging has to be one way here. It has to be another way here. Yeah.
Right. And for people, we talked to Liz Carmouche, who's a veteran MMA fighter, just stone cold assassin.
Yeah.
Her nickname is
the Girl Rilla. Yeah.
No, she was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. And she uses CBD as part of her recovery process.
Right. Exactly.
She was explaining how it helps with inflammation.
And that is illegal in some places. Like hemp is illegal. Still. And again, this is where prohibition comes in, because you get a gas station or these places that have bad products out there, unsafe products. But yeah, and it's not only the cannabis aspects that we're seeing. We talked a lot. Psychedelics. We're talking a lot. There's been a lot of, great movement there, but there's also been some setbacks, and we have some great conversations with people that have experimented with them and experienced some amazing results. And we get into all that this season too, but also how, the policy is still kind of pushing this down, and we're not getting to see the full benefits of maybe some of the medical things that we could see. We have so many soldiers come back from war right now with PTSD and, post-COVID and all these things where treatment could be incredibly beneficial. And again, a step back.
That's a big part why hearing these stories is important. Because like you said, you can hear the information and you can see it, and it's easy to just, these people just want to get high. This is one thing. But when you actually hear people's experience and how it's helped them and how it's benefited them and how they've been able to help other people, it changes your whole perspective. And I think it's got to be respected, just because these are people that we say we care about and that we look up to. These are our veterans. These are our older people. And I think people just try to always go back to the reefer madness. It's people that want to get high, that want to abuse drugs. And yes, I'm sure there is that, and that's never not going to be a thing. It doesn't matter if you change the laws on that. People are still going to find a way to go around the legal things. But if you have a chance to actually help people that need the help, and it doesn't change anything on the other side, why would you not do that?
I totally agree. Or at least get it out there to, let's just lay it on the table. Like what works, what doesn't. Like, these are people's lives. And, one of my favorite experiences on kind of our tour here talking to people was speaking to John Osborne, from the Brothers Osborne. I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland. He grew up 30 minutes south of me in Deal, and just seeing this big old scruffy dude with the lowest voice in the world, talking very genuinely about, suicidal thoughts and psilocybin and how reaching out to a friend helped him, and a real amazing moment for me. And I hope you all listen to that episode. Was anything from the tour, anything that stood out to you?
Yeah,
any
definitely.
Of those types of stories?
I mean,
not giving too much, but
no.
spoilers.
I mean, yeah. No, y'all got to listen to hear the actual details, but just to like Ricky Williams, sitting down with him, that's somebody who's had his story told by other people.
Right.
And I didn't see this when I watched all the stories about him. He quit because of weed. He wanted to smoke so
Yeah.
much. And his thing was he wanted to be honest about what was going on
Yeah.
and how it was going on. And he said once he started doing that, it freed up a lot of stuff for him.
I'm
And
so jealous you got to do that.
no, it was fun.
No, and being honest from all directions is where we really want to
Yes.
take it. Not
Yes.
only the benefits, but what are the risks? What is safe practice? What does that look like? Who do you need to talk to? Like all these things are important because really when things get out there and it's like, oh, this is all great, everything's wonderful, you can do whatever you
Yeah.
want. That's when we see these slide backs because people weren't being honest the other way too. And so like
Yeah.
it takes
You were
everyone
lying
together.
about the effects of it,
Yeah.
and because you wanted it to appear a certain way. And so, if everybody's just like you said, like Ricky said, be honest, or like our other guests, be real.
Be real.
Just be real, man.
Be real is the coolest man I've ever met in my entire life.
Absolutely,
Gosh.
man.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about be honest, and there's no one more honest than with you than like your friends and family. And we talked to two people that went through, struggled with addiction, still are going through their things. Two musicians, Brent Smith and Marcus King. You might remember Brent Smith from Shinedown, from back then, just an amazing artist. I had a conversation with him, really cool just to hear like his story of recovery and where he's at. And then Marcus King, kind of talking about what he calls and what people call like California sober, which you don't do anything else, but he does smoke cannabis. So it's interesting, and we want to tell these stories from people that struggled with substances, are trying to work their way in recovery, and what that looked like and what helped. And like I said, to be honest, it's their friends and family, the community that was around them that you see was what helped the success.
Right.
It was a teacher for Marcus. It was Brent's manager. It's these people around them that if they weren't there and that social network wasn't there, who knows where they'd be. It wasn't getting thrown into a tank and being told like sober up and clean up and then make things are going to be okay. And so I just thought those conversations to show what addiction is, how people are dealing with it, and how important it is to have those people around you, have honesty, love, respect, the things that we all need for everything.
People always think we're advocating for drugs.
Right.
And when you hear advocating, you think advocating for drug use, but it's not advocating. Once again, we're back to the people. We're advocating, like, yes, if people need cannabis, yes, but also we're advocating for people when they're trying to get off of drugs, when they're trying to get off of a substance, when they're trying to recover, when they're trying to rehab. So I think it can easily be looked at by people that don't want any progress to be, well, they just want people to have drugs.
Yeah.
And that's how you kind of point to Oregon and say, look at what happened over here with that, but also look at what they were trying to do. And I think we got some good interviews with people that show what can be done.
Yeah. And it shows how our solutions are this one size fits all approach. And what's good for me is not going to be good for you, and hitting it at the right time. And there's no way that we can have that type of aspects with some one size fits all approach that we've been kind of pushing on this and having a right and a wrong.
Right.
There's just this array. And I hope that comes out in a lot of these interviews, and hopes that opens some people's eyes to be like, hey, these are people, like you said, I trust and respect, and I get to hear their stories. And it's not just, like you said, advocating for use. Like, we try to hit a lot of different parts of this, but as you can tell, like there's a lot of moving aspects, but it's going in the right direction, and hopefully we can shine light a little bit on that.
Yeah, that's all we're trying to do here.
Yeah.
The whole thing about this is about people, hearing from people, how it's going to affect people, and the benefits that it has for people, man. We're really excited for y'all to hear it, and let's get into it.
I can't wait. Yeah.